It's a gewaltige schus to be oisik in Abbas HaTorah and especially give chizik to Klal Yisrael on the inyan of Tefilas Yemei Kippurim. The schus goes to the Agudah for always being oisik in these inyanim and being sai ma'abitz Torah and sai being ma'ale the ruchnius level of Klal Yisrael and Avodas Hashem. We're going to talk today a little bit about the inyan of Na'ila. The avoid of Tefilas Neila. What's the avoid of Tefilas Neila? So let's go down to such a basic level as what the word means, Na'ila. What does Na'ila mean? So we understand simplistically Na'ila is closing up. Noya, like you close the door, you noya l'sadelas, right? So generally we look at it as something is ending, something is closing down. The day is closing. And in fact, in the Yerushalmi, there's a dispute whether Na'ila is referring to the day, but again, seemingly the closing of the day is closing. And what the Yerushalmi calls Na'ila Sharei Shemayim, the gates of heaven are closing, or Na'ilas Sharei Heichel, which means the gates of the Beis HaMikdash at night, they used to close the Azorah. The gates of the Azorah would close. And that's what Na'ila stands for. Again, they seem to complement each other, and at the very most, there's a machlekes between these Amoraim on the Zman. Meaning, what Zman is Na'ila? That's how the Rishonim explain it. Should one be davening Na'ila before Shkiyah, which would be Na'ila Sharei Heichel? You're davening right before the sun is going down, because that's when they close the Heichel. They close the gates of the Heichel by Shkiyas HaCham. That was the end of the Avodas HaKorbanos, by Shkiyas HaCham. Or is it Nilas Sharei Shemayim? Then that would be more like Soif Shkiyah, which would be what we call today Tzizik Yechavim. And that actually is an independent Machlokes Rishonim. When are you supposed to daven Na'ila? Should you be davening Na'ila actually during the day, which is the Rambam's opinion? So he embraces the view that it's Sharei Heichel. So that means you daven before Shkiyah, and then in fact the Rosh brings that down. Then you would have Birchas Kohanim, like we do in Musaf. You'd have Birchas Kohanim because it's during the day. It's still during the day. And the opinions that disagree and hold that it's Na'ila Sharei Shemayim, there is no Birchas Kohanim, which is the way we do it. We generally finish Na'ila at night. My minion, fortunately or unfortunately, has to put up with the Baal Tefilah. So there's no Birchas Kohanim. There's no. It's past Tzizik Yechavim too. Could almost down Shachris after after Na'ila. So with that's our minig. We've embraced that minig Yisrael. And Mechaber doesn't hold that way, but again, there's different views. But both opinions seem to hold you're chopping the end. You're chopping the end, meaning even the opinion who holds that we go by Shkiyah, right? So you would think any time during the day would be okay, or it would follow, let's say, Zman Mincha. Zman Mincha is from a half hour after Chatzos, you could have a Mincha. The whole day you could have a Mincha. Right? But Na'ila is not that way. Even the Rambam, who takes on that Na'ila is a day tefillah, not a night tefillah, he still insists that if you did it hours before Shkiyah, no good. You're not Yotz. Now again, I'm not here to talk halacha on this topic. But the halacha here will give us a better understanding of what the tefillah is about. Because the Rambam seems to be nishtahin and nishtaheh, the Rambam's opinion. Because if you feel that it's based on Na'ila Sharei Shemayim, you're sort of saying it's Yom Kippur day tefillah. So it should be like Mincha and Musaf. And if you hold that it's Na'ila Sharei Shemayim, then it's not Yom Kippur tefillah. But the Rambam is holding on to both because he's saying, do it before Shkiyah. So he's pushing us in the direction that it's Yom Kippur tefillah. And then he's telling us, but don't do it a lot before Shkiyah. Why not? Well, why should it be different than Mincha? To the degree that you're not Yotze. To the degree that if you do it a couple of hours before, you're not Yotze. Why are you not Yotze? And again, this dispute of whether it's part of Yom Kippur davening or it's sort of out of the realm of Yom Kippur, it's just a Tesefes Tefillah, impacts another Shaila. I get this every year. People ask me this Shaila. They go to sleep after Mincha, and which is a Shaila on its own. whether you're allowed to sleep on Yom Kippur, it's like Rosh Hashanah. It's brought down in Halacha Rosh Hashanah, but there are some Rishonim who hold the Halacha applies to Yom Kippur as well. And some people, unfortunately, they sleep through. And it's a very bad feeling. There's nothing like sleeping through Nila. It's a terrible feeling. So they come to me always, could we do a tashlumin? Could we daven 2 ma'ariv? Like you do normally if you miss a tefillah. If you miss a mincha, you daven 2 tefillahs. Right? You daven 2 ma'ariv. If you miss ma'ariv, you could do 2 chakras. Well, what do you do with the... And the answer is it's inconclusive. Which means, Primi Gadim holds this tashlumin. So Primi Gadim holds if somebody never slept through Nila, they would be able to be mashlam daven 2 ma'ariv. And the Ramami Panu holds that you can't. Ramami Panu says it doesn't work. You can't make up for Nila. And the reason why you can't make up for Nila, he feels, is because Nila is a exclusive Yom Kippur tefillah. He compares it to Musaf. And just like if a person missed Musaf, you can't daven at night, be mashlam Musaf, there's no tashlum into Musaf. Because Musaf correlates with the carbon, and that the Rashba already writes in his Teshuvas, that if you missed Musaf, you can't make tashlumin. And the Rashba says because you can't make up for a carbon that you missed, A. And B says it's a carbon, it's a tefillah that relates to the day itself, the day of Shabbos or the day of Yom Tov. And therefore you can't, it's not rachmi. Rachmi means you're just asking for rachmi shemayim, for pity from shemayim. That you could make up. I missed my mincha. So Chazal say tefillah rachamim ninu. It's rachamim. You could ask for rachamim later in the day. You could ask the next day for rachamim. But anything which is directly connected to the day, it can't be separated. So once you missed it, it's like what we call me'uvas le'yuchaliska. So actually, the opinion of many achronim is that you can't make up nila. Even our generation, the Gedolei HaPoskim, took issue with the Pri Megadim. The Rabbi Sol Yankel Fisher's Atzal in his Teshuvas feels there's no tashlumin. He says, I don't understand the Pri Megadim. How he could say there's tashlumin. The Shevet HaLevi, Ta'im Vosner's Atzal, or the view you can't be mashlim. So again, we have this, it seems to be a dual view of how to look at Na'ila. Do we look at it as a Yom Kippur tefillah? Or do we look at it as just an added, a rachmin, you know? But what I'm trying to bring out to all of you is that even the Rambam, who insists that the tefillah should be done on Yom Kippur, so it's not just a Tosefes tefillah, it's a Yom Kippur tefillah, he still feels it must be done at the end of the day. If you do it kama shoyis before Shkia, it doesn't work. Why not? What's the idea? So I feel that this connects to the avodah of the Tefilas Neila, and I'll try to share with all of you machshava that always hits me during Neila, that I think about, I try to be makabel, and I'll share with all of you. I hope it's a chizik for all of you. There's no question that if you look at the general theme of Neila, of course, it's being makabel the emunah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. My Rebbe of Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal every year would say that a failed Nila Chas v'Sholom is a Nila where your emunah was not enhanced. That you come at the end of the Nila and you say Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. He says Ayidav Zayin v'Amalach when he says those words Hashem hu Elokim. And if throughout Yom Kippur, culminating with Nila, your Hashem hu Elokim is not something more real than it is the whole year. Rabbi Yankel said a ma'aseh. He said there was a woman, fascinating story, a woman that immigrated to Eretz Yisrael in the time of the British Mandate. She was a woman about 90 years old. She was on the boat, like all the people who went then, and she was next to a Jewish fellow, secular fellow, who was also going to Eretz Yisrael, and he was helping the Jewish movement. Actually, it was a secular Jewish movement. For sure, a non-religious Jewish movement from the States that was sending this individual as a representative to help establish and help. This is way before, well before the state. Anyway, so the British Mandate wasn't a very geshmaka tkufa for Klal Yisrael. And as much as people say this and this is no good and this is no good, it was a lot better. It's a lot better now than it was then. I remember somebody once said Shabbat Yosef this shaila. about the government and all the shilas, what's a from years approach, how to look at the government on it. And that's the biggest machlekes. Do we support having ministries in the government? Agud obviously does, and some chassidim do, some don't. The Torah Karti obviously doesn't. So Rav Ovadia Yosef looked at this Yid, and he tells him, Ani ayiti tachat habritim. I lived through under the British mandate. It's a lot better today. So this secular Jew was together with this older Jewish woman who was about 90 years old, going to Eretz Yisrael from Chicago with kimat nothing. That means no money. But what alarmed him was she had no address. She didn't have an address. And I heard this ma'aseh from Rabbi Yankiva. She had no address. She had a great nephew by the name of Sokolov, but she didn't have his address. So imagine an older woman, no family, no money, and no address. But she knows she has this great nephew, his name is Sokolov, and she said he knows his way around. He works for a publication. He knows his way around, and she'll find him. He says, I sat down with this lady and I told her, this is not going to work. He said, the way the British work over there is, if you don't know where you're going, they take care of you. They get a hold of you, and then you could be stuck. And it's not like they don't put you up in the hill, and then you're stuck. He said, you can't go. And she said, don't worry, I'll find him. Don't worry. Anyway, this went on for days. The day that they were getting to the port, he was just pushing away. He got the feel for this older Jewish woman. And he was like, I'm going to try to help you because I'm telling you, lady. He says, I don't even understand why you're so calm. She said, you don't understand why I'm so calm. She says, do I look like a young woman to you?
Amazing.
I'm 90 years old. I'm 90 years old. She said, the Rebbeinu Shalom has taken care of me for 90 years. She said, every morning I wake up and I say, Hashem hu ha'elokim. And he never disappoints me. She said, you think now after 90 years I'm going to worry I don't have an address? She didn't have even a... Anyway, they get off the boat. There's a whole crew to meet them. Not this woman, obviously, but to meet this fellow, this secular Jew. They want to take pictures. They want to making an article. The pictures become the Yikel. That's always my problem. I go to a chasna, try to miss out a Kedushin. The photographer puts himself in front of the Eidei Kedushin, so they shouldn't see the Mesiras Tabaz. They need a picture. Say, now, Ronim, if you're going to stand between the Eidim and the Kala, there's no Kedushin Chal. You took a picture of nothing. There's no Kedushin Chal. These guys have to see. Right? That's the Mesiras. By the break in the glass, I don't care that they'll kill 3 people to get a picture. That doesn't bother me. But the Eidei Kedushin, so they were. So this guy said, he was a PR person. He said, I've been on the boat for 2 weeks. You're not taking a picture of me now. No way. You're going to meet me. He told him where he's staying. You'll meet me there. Give me your name. Right? And anyway, so they reluctantly agreed to hold off on the pictures for a couple hours till he gets a chance to wash up. And so the guy says, okay, I'm going to leave a message with the hotel. What's your name? So the guy who was writing the article, said his name is Sokolov. He says, Sokolov. He goes once back to the boat. He says, did you tell me your nephew was Sokolov? This was given. So not only did Sokolov become a Shemet Torah Mitzvahs, this guy who wrote the story over, he also became a Shemet Torah Mitzvahs. So Yaakov always used to say this ma'aseh. He said, Hashem Elokim meintach mefalos tzachnoret Rebbeinu Shalom. He said, Alta Freud, this old lady from Chicago who didn't go to yeshiva, she knew Hashem Elokim. Hashem Elokim. So that's definitely, the avoid of Na'ila has to build your emunah. That's Aleph base. But I want to get to the Nakuda of Na'ila, because that you could say about all the tefillas of Yom Kippur. That idea that a Jew has to reach a level of Hashem Elokim, it's not just words that we say at the end of Na'ila, but it really, it brings out everything that we were supposed to get from Yom Kippur. But Na'ila perhaps is added to that. And this idea that I'm telling you now, I heard b'shem of Shlomo Wolbe, Zecher Tzadik Levrocha. Rav Shlomo Wolbe said that the word Na'ila could also come from Ne'ilas HaSandal. Ne'ilas HaSandal is very different than Ne'ilas HaSha'arim. Okay? It's almost the opposite. Ne'ilas HaSandal is what you say when you're putting on shoes. Right? It's Ne'ilas HaSandal. Right? Putting on a shoe. Noel could mean to tie on. Actually, the opposite of closing down. Nila Shari Shemayim means that it's over, right? That's what it means, it's over. Nila Shari Heichel means the Heichel's closed, right? Na'ila can also mean a lashon of that you're holding on to it. You're not throwing it away, you're tying it on. There's a Gemara in Sukkot Daf Mem Dalet. The Gemara says, somebody who makes an Isel, who makes a connection to the Chag, Malol of HaKosov, what we call today Nilas HaChag, right? Or Isru Chag. Whatever you do that extends after the Yom Tiv. Malol of HaKosov, the Torah considers, Ki'ilu, Bona Mizbeach V'hikra V'olov Korban. It says, though you built the Mizbeach and you brought Korbanos. So I was always medayik. It seems from Chazal that Isru Chag is not what we think it is. We look at Isru Chag, it's like an added day. It's another little piece. It's like a shmek tabik. We say in Yiddish. You have a little smell left of the Yom Tov. Like the Rebbes make a tish. There's a little something. It's a sprinkle of the Yom Tov that's remaining. That's the way in our minds that we look at Nilas HaChag. And for that matter, Isru Chag. The understanding that Chazal had seems to be different. Because on Yom Tov, you can't build a Mizbeach. The Yom Tov is not a time that you could build, you can't build it. It's also to build a Mizbeach on Yom Tov. Binyan Beis HaMikdash is not Derech Shabbos for Yom Tov. So the most you could have on Yom Tov is Korbanos. That you could bring on Yom Tov. Not all Korbanos, but Korbanos HaChag, Korbanos that relate to Yom Tov, you could bring Korbanos HaKavuz Man, right? But you never have Korbanos and Binyan Mizbeach all in one. The Jew doesn't have that on Yom Tov. But the Gemara is saying, somebody has an Isru L'chag, he has both milas. Kilubona Mizbeach, V'hikriv Olav Kol. How do we understand this, Chazal? Clearly they're telling us that there's an element to Isru Chag, which is even greater than the Yom Tov. The Yom Tov doesn't have that milah. The Yom Tov doesn't have the milah of Bona Mizbeach. It can't have that milah. It's not allowed to have that milah. But yet, the Isru Chag does. The Isru Chag has the milah of Bona Mizbeach. How do we understand that? Na'ila ends with a tkiyah. Some actually do, it's brought down in the Torah, some do tashrat, tkiyah, shvarim, true tkiyah. Right? What does that come from? What does that represent? So there's a big dispute, both on the structure of it, if it's done as a tkiyah or it's done as a tkiyah, shvarim, true tkiyah, and what's the point of it? And should it only be done after the Yom Tov is over? Should it be done even if the Yom Tov, let's say the Yom Tov is not over yet? The most early mocker to that is, to the minig, is Yovel. Yovel, they used to blow shofar. And Yovel, they blew shofar on Yom Kippur. The 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur was sort of what they would call a Havdalah of Havdalos, lame duck session. Right? In politics, they call it that, right? It's the big shayla now. If they could vote in a Supreme Justice during a lame duck session. If it's ethical, if it's not ethical. Right? So Yovel, Lahavdil, had a lame duck session where Yovel came in, but it wasn't affected yet till Yom Kippur. And the Gemara actually brings down that for those 10 days, the Avodim, they weren't freed, but they weren't working. It was nishtay nishtayel. Then Yovel, there was a tkiyah, and that brought in Yovel. So that's the connection. So there's a lot of questions asked. What does that have to do with Yom Kippur? It's true, it happened on Yom Kippur, but it only happened on Yovel. Once in 50 years. So what are we doing? If you want to tell me every 50 years on Yom Kippur, okay? So there's a Yovel element. Only happened. That's A. B, that happened on the Itzumei Shel Yom. They did that on Yom Kippur. Not at the end. We're doing it almost at the end of Yom Kippur. So what's our connection? And B'chlal, what's the point of bringing that in? What's the idea of bringing that in? So I'll tell you like this. Years ago, I said over a Maisa, which became almost by me part of my Ashri Yeshiva. I had such chizik from this Maisa, but I got much more chizik from this story after I heard Chelik Beis of the story, which a lot of times happens with stories. You hear Chelik Aleph, it sounds amazing, but there's something missing. And then you have Chelik Beis, and it's a whole, it opens up everything. This story needs the Chelik Beis. Chelik Aleph, many of you have heard from me, was a Maisa. A Yerushalmi guy went to Hebrew University, not Chas v'Shalom to the college. He went to look, they have a very special library there with all kinds of old Sforim. And he was researching something. So he went to the library. Anyway, the Maisa goes that he brought along lunch with him. Because he knew he's spending the day there. Versteht he's not buying the cafeteria, Rabbanut, kashrut. He came with his Koshel, Mahadlim, and a Mahadlim. Right? Anyway, he sits down for lunch. There's a lady not far from where he's sitting. She was a librarian. She was also eating. Anyway, he's benching. And he finished eating, he benched. But Kyle, he benched like he was at home, benching. As he's benching, he gets to the part of the Duch Samosen. He gets to where it says, Shaloi Nevoish, V'loi Nikolei, V'loi Nikosh, Shaloi Lom Void. And she makes a comment. Okay. He ignores it. He finishes benching. After he finishes benching, this secular lady, she looks secular. She tells him, you Taita, you made a mistake. Now easy, you're Shalmi Talmud Chacham. This secular lady telling me I made a mistake. Yeah, what mistake did I make? She said it's not Loi Nikosh. Doesn't say Nikosh. He said, what do you mean? Of course that's Loi Nikosh. That's the Loi Nikosh. Anyway, he looks at a bench he was using. The Taka doesn't say in his bench Nikosh. But he said, I'm here in Hebrew University. I'll go right back in the library. I'll pull out a siddur. So he goes to the siddur section. Feldnishkin Siddurim. Starts pulling out Siddurim. Not one says Nikosh. And she's sitting there like, she chapped the Yerushalmi. And he said, you know how to bench. He's mamish bezyenis. He says, tell me shalach, give me your address. I'm going to send you. Anyway, he had a very hard time. When he went back, he had a hard time finding the Nikosha. Because most of the Siddurim said, Loi Nevosh, Loi Nikolei. Anyway, that's what happened in the beginning. Subsequent, sometime later, he gets an invitation to Chasana. Doesn't know the Chasan or the Kala. Looks at the invitation. Chasan he doesn't know, the Kala he doesn't know. Nothing rings a bell. No. There's a special note on the invitation. Bevakasha from the Kala. The Kala side is asking Bevakasha. You should come to the Chasan. Okay? It's coming. He goes to the Chasana. Gets to the Chasana. He's there for a little while. He looks around. Nothing looks familiar to him. Nothing looks familiar. How's she like your house? Nothing looks familiar. Anyway, he gets a message. Somebody's looking for him. The Kala wants to talk to him. Bring him to the Kala. The Kala says, you don't remember me. He says, I am the librarian. She married a Bentayra. I'm the librarian. I'll tell you what happened, she says. When I met you the first time in Hebrew University, I was going through a terrible part of my life. That was a part of my life where I was totally irreligious. I come from a very religious home, but I was totally irreligious. My parents loved me. Anyway, they let me live at home. But then I met somebody in the university, an Arab, and I decided I'm marrying him. And my parents said, Ad Khan, this is it. This is the red line. And they gave me a zman. I have to decide. I have to either I end the relationship or they're severing their relationship with me. She said, anyway, I decided I'm giving myself a day. And that was it. She said, as the day got near, I felt I'm going to have to, I'm going ahead with this marriage. It's the choice of my boyfriend or my parents. This is what I'm doing. She said, that day, I got in the mail your copy, because this he didn't give up. He finally found one. And when he found it, he circled it with red ink, Nikosho, and he put a bunch of arrows. He was venting. Put all the arrows, Nikosho, Oilam Boet. She said, so the day that I have to make my decision, this letter comes from this religious man with red ink around it saying, Nikosho, don't stumble. That was a sign from heaven. And I backed out. And here I am today. And that's why I wanted you to buy me chasana. So that's a beautiful story. But that's only Chelik Aleph. What's the Chelik Beis of the story? Chelik Beis of the story is that this Yerushalmi is only half a Yerushalmi. He's a half a Sephardi. His wife is a Pelagi. So he's a Pelagi, big deal. And Einikul from Rabbi Avram Pelagi. Rabbi Avram Pelagi was makbid by benching not only to do Mayim Achroinim, the way, to wash your hands before you bench, which is not only because of Melech Stoimis, for the salt, that could chas v'sholem hinder a person's vision, it's also to be clean when you bench. That's why the Yavitz brings down that people who eat with silverware, the woman, he says, are very makbid on that they have less of a shaykhis to Mayim Achroinim. But he said that the reach of the benching should stay with you. When you bench, you should walk away with a feeling of cleanliness. So he was makbid that his children and Einikoch, they should wash Mayim Achroinim with besamim. It should not just be water. It should be water that has a pleasant smell, so that the experience of benching HaKadosh Baruch Hu should stay with you. And secondly, he left a tzavo, which the Shari Tshuva brings out a similar thing, that they should bench b'koil. They should bench not quietly, but b'koil. So it was that gave his Einikol the ability to be makar of who knows how many neshamas in Klal Yisrael. Because the Zayder of Avram Pelagi didn't want that you walk away from benching. You don't walk away from benching. It's an experience that you take with you. You don't walk away from Bechsamos. So my friends, I believe that's the Yesod of Neila. The Yesod of Neila is the biggest danger that you have Yom Kippur is chas v'sholem, you walk away from Yom Kippur. You can't walk away from Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur has to be taken with you. The madreg of Yom Kippur has to go with you. I always say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu called out to Avram Avinu. After Avram shechted the ayil. After Avram shechted the ayil. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him more haftochas. He gave him more blessings and more promises. Only after he shechted the ayil. The ayil was an insignificant act. When you read through the Kriyas HaTorah that you read on Rosh Hashanah, it almost looks like that was, we went for the Akedah, that was the big event. The big event got canceled. Okay, now we built this whole thing for nothing? Okay, there's a ram over there, let's quickly chap and machamais. That's the way you read the story. But if you look a little deeper, first of all, you look deeper, what do you see? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu only gives the haftocha after you shechted the ayil. Yan ki yosizas hadover hazeh. That's after the ayil. Till today, what do we remember? The ayil of Yitzchak. The shofar is the sound of an animal. We're remembering the ayil. But isn't the ayil just like, because everything was canceled, so we just hopped a little something? Obviously, it wasn't just a little something. And the answer is that Avram Avinu knew that if there's an Akedah, you can't just walk away. You have to take something with you that could become permanent from that Akedah. And what could become permanent is a kol. And that ayil was the beginning of all the avodah that we have till today. We're holding on to that ayil. The idea is to hold on to it. The Baba of Rebbe, Reb Shlomo mi Baba of Zechat Tzadik Levracha, that's why it's called Akedas Yitzchak. Akedah was Avram tying down Yitzchak. Why do we call it Akedas Yitzchak? That was just a practical thing, Akedah. Just tied him down. No, that's what made it permanent. That represents the concept of it staying. Say Chazal, kol ha'osi isur l'chag. Somebody makes an isur l'chag, the Yom Tov stays with them, then it becomes permanent. The difference between the Mizbeach and a Korban is the Mizbeach stays. The Mizbeach doesn't go away. The Korban can go away. The idea is to make from your Korban a Mizbeach. And that's what the Isur Chag does. That's what Na'ila is. The shofar of Yovel was unique, that it wasn't just representing the years that they counted. Because the years that we count to reach Yovel is only facilitation to create a Yovel. The shofar that we blow in Yovel takes, in a sense, all of the 49 years that we counted and makes it materialize. Now you blow the shofar and it becomes something. That's the shofar that we have at the end of Tefilas Neila. Not to leave go of what we did in Avodas Hayoim, but to take it with us. Just like the Yovel, the shofar that we blow on Yovel, it's not once in 50 years, and it's not for the day. It's to trigger all the avodah to go weiter, to materialize. And that's really the avodah of Neila. The avodah of Neila, could be that's the pshat in the Rambam. Getting back to the Rambam. Yes, the Rambam holds that Tefilas Neila belongs to Yom Kippur. And that's why it has to be by day, according to the Rambam. But it has to be at the end of the day. Because if it's not at the end of the day, it's not fulfilling its purpose. Its purpose is to grab it and to stay with it. So if you don't grab it and stay with it, you lost the whole tachlis. That's why the Rambam says if you do several hours before the end of the day, it doesn't work. It doesn't help. It's missing the tachlis. So what I would ask all of you, I'm just telling you this is what I ask of myself. So I'm just sharing with you what I ask for myself, is that every day we went through a year that we went through this year, which was anything but ordinary. We had a year that everybody has their own trup and their own take and their own understanding or their own lack of understanding. But it was one of those years that if this is going to be just another Yom Kippur, just like I'm saying, Yom Kippur can't just be Yom Kippur. This can't even be even an unordinary Yom Kippur, this can't be a regular unordinary Yom Kippur. This has to be a corona impacted Yom Kippur that we should never have. Tzaras and Klal Yisrael, Hashem, it should be the beginning of Geulas and Yeshuas for Klal Yisrael. But what we have to do this year is be makabel on ourselves. Look at Neila. Think about something about Neila, whether it's Laman Nechtal Miyeshik Yedenu, whether it's Hachzirinu B'Shuvas L'Fanech, whether it's Satanes and Application. And what I'm asking all of you is every single day, spend 1 minute and think about Neila. And that day should be impacted because of your Yom Kippur. That you take Yom Kippur not just to Neila, but you tie it on to you. Rav Shlomo Wolbe said, "Sedav bleiben l'chol hapochas biz de seder." The way Rav Shlomo Wolbe sees it is the two most inspirational times of the year is Neila and Leil Seder. So he says Neila has to last till the Seder, and the Seder has to last till Yom Kippur. That was Rav Shlomo Wolbe, Zechat Tzadik Livracha's idea. Since we don't have that kind of a Seder like we have Neila, I feel Neila has to stay the whole year. But those of you that have a Seder like Neila and Echanami, you could rely on Shlomo Wolbe that the Neila could last for 6 months. But if every day you take mamish 1 minute and think about something madrega that you were makabel by Neila in some tefillah, so everybody gets impacted in something in the tefillah, and you're makabel to think about that for 1 minute. 1 minute, I mean 1 minute, mamish, just to think, and you take that with you. Then your Neila will become something which is a mitzvah Hashem like Yovel. It's going to be something you take with you. It's going to become part of you. And once it's part of you, the next year you go to the next madrega. I always tell the Talmidim to board him. A Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says, we say, Mi yala b'har Hashem, u'mi yokum b'mkoim kodshay. So the Baal Shem Tov asks. It's a contradiction. Yala means to go up. And yokum is to stay in one place. But we say Mi Yala Bar Hashem, and then we say Mi Yokum B'Mkoim Kodshay. Who stays? So you're starting off with Oila, and then you're going to Yokum. The Baal Shem says a beautiful idea. He says, why is it that if we look at our general Ruchnius Madrega, we're pretty much the same? Right? If you didn't see somebody in 10 years, you meet them. You don't see 10 years of Steigerei in a person. Go to any other area of a person's life, whether it's financial, whether it's even education-wise. I mean, imagine meeting a kid in elementary school, you meet him after high school, and he pretty much knows the same. It'll be a pretty big disaster, right? Everything in life we have, we would be totally distraught if there's not a significant change over years. So, but look at people's ruchnius. Think about it. It's a hard question because it's not geschmack to be realistic about it. It's a hard question, but the Baal Shem Tov says, think about it. If you meet somebody you didn't see in 10 years, including yourself, you can look in the mirror. But somebody you meet 10 years, do they generally have any significant changes to their ruchnius? And unfortunately, the answer is no. No. You're happy, Baruch Hashem, if somebody stays stable. Right? Baruch Hashem. Most people are very happy with that. The only part of their life they're happy with stability. My ruchnius is stable. Right? I'm doing Daf Yomi, and it's beautiful, by the way. I'm doing Daf Yomi, this is my sixth time Daf Yomi. Did you add a Gillian Hashas? Did you add the notes on the bottom of the art scroll? Something. Did you add? It's in any other area of life, are you happy with it? Fakel. A lot of people are happy. This time around, I found a daf in 20 minutes. Last time was 32 minutes, the quickest daf. Now I got 20 minutes. They're working now on a 16-minute daf. Right? So it's an area of our life, ruchnius, we were happy with should stay, but the Baal Shem says, it doesn't make any sense. He says, you go through Yom Kippur every year. Every Jew has an aliyah on Yom Kippur. Every Jew has an aliyah on Sukkot and Simchas Torah and Chanukah, Purim, our beautiful Yom Tovim. Every time you make a simcha, Rahman al-Son, if you mistata with somebody, help somebody through a difficult time, you always get inspired. So why do people stay the same? It's such a great question. The Baal Shem Tov says a more gezach. He says our ruchnius life becomes like a heart monitor. He doesn't use a heart monitor, obviously, as an example. The heart monitor, basically, the whole screen is only 8, 9 inches, or 10 inches, or 12 inches. Right? It doesn't have to go any higher than that because it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. So pretty much one screen gives you the view. Right? Imagine if it would go, no screen would be big enough, right? He says, our ruchnius is exactly like that. Hashem Kippur, Chanukah, little Purim, everybody has it. And then back down. Mi Yala Ba'ar Hashem, who gets to the top? Somebody who every time they have an aliyah, they hold that aliyah. Mi Yokum B'mkoim Kodshay. If you hold on to that steiging that you did, that madrega you got up to, that step. If you're going up a step and down a step and up a step and down a step, so that's your life. That's your life. Up and down. The only way, and that's what we have to make from our na'ila. What we have to make from our na'ila is that the na'ila should take the Yom Kippur and make it part of the aliyah klali of who we are. We have to walk away with that. Shlomo Shadron said that v'hu rachum yichaper rovai. What's the v'hu rachum? What chet did we do? What chet did we do? You know what Shlomo Shadron said? He said, as soon as Neila ends, he says, Mitrach choy mit the boich. I can't say it as good as he said it. Your stomach's already talking to you. What does my wife have for me at home? What do you eat? You just finished. Hashem will give, Hashem will give, Hashem will give. You were a malach. He says, a malach is not worried about what's in the kitchen. He says, as soon as you finished Hashem will give, you went, opened up your Sirot HaMayav and you say, okay, what's for supper? He says, that's your first Yerida. Now you have to eat supper. I'm not advocating. There's a big Indian to eat matzah and kippur. But I'm saying is, chas v'sholom, not to allow all the madregas that we reach on Yom Kippur to go away. And like I said, the simple eitzah is everything to be makabel every single day, to give 1 minute of thought of one machshava that you have during Nila. And that should be every single day. And I can almost give you a guarantee that the whole year is going to be on a different madrega. You should all be zeicher taka to have a gemar chsi mitzvah, a good kiben shtior, nechta, v'nechta, wow, tol chaim tov, together with ganz Klal Yisrael.